Today we celebrate Dr. King for standing up for the self-evident truth Americans hold so dear, that no matter what the color of our skin or the place of our birth, we are all created equal by God.
That was President Trump on Friday. That was, of course, before signing a proclamation in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Let's bring in right now from Capitol Hill the host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and the president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton. Al, it's kind of hard to listen to Donald Trump talk about Martin Luther King's legacy the same day that, as Eric Erickson said, he was calling around bragging about making racist comments about people coming from countries that he didn't like.
No doubt about it. And when you look at the fact, Joe, that not only did he say the words that has been confirmed by others, the policy, when you look at the fact that he backs it up by saying, why aren't we bringing more people in from Norway? Well, look at the trade we do with Norway and look at the trade we do with sub-Saharan Africa. It's not even in America's interest to insult African countries, aside from the fact that it's blatantly racist. If you look at the fact that the United States has intelligence operations all over Africa because they need to combat ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Do you imagine what the ISIS operatives are doing today, going around telling people don't cooperate with American intelligence against us? They think you all live in S houses or S holes. I mean, this is against Americans' interests, whether you're Republican or Democrat. So what this president has done is not only racist, it is a national security risk. And on King Day, for him to sit up and stand up and sign a proclamation when he has over and over and over again demonstrated racism is really something that this country ought to really say we're not going to tolerate.
Well, and what he said on Friday was calculated. NBC News reporting that he called around the night before and was asking people what they thought about him possibly using language like that the next day. He goes in, He's then lectured by Lindsey Graham and called out by Dick Durbin. And then again, according to Eric Erickson, that afternoon, he's calling people around bragging about the language that he's using. This is a calculated political. I mean, we have come so far in so many ways, but Donald Trump appears, does he not, determined to drag us back, not 30 years ago, but 100 years ago.
No, he seems very determined, and he's determined with his policies to do that and his language. I mean, you and I have met with Donald Trump down through the years. I've known him 35 years and marched on him, protested him, and have met with him. All of my meetings with Donald Trump has been far more profane than profound. So I know that he used this kind of language. It is what he does. And I no doubt he's calculated it. You know, the irony is that 36 years ago today, January 15th, 82, I was in my 20s. James Brown, the Godfather of Soul, brought me to the White House. He was lobbying President Reagan. He wanted me to go because I was youth director in New York of Dr. King's Northern Operation in New York, Operation Breadbasket. And he was lobbying to support Mrs. King and Congressman Conyers making this a federal holiday. And I said, Mr. Brown, they're never going to do this. Ronald Reagan called Dr. King a communist. He does not believe in what Dr. King stood for. But we went. And years later, Reagan did sign that proclamation. Now, I'm sure it's had a lot more to do with the meeting with James Brown, but it was a movement. But Reagan accepted it, saluted it. Reagan had his own agenda with Black America. I didn't agree with it, but he had it. Donald Trump doesn't even have a black agenda. He has no urban agenda. He has no agenda for civil rights. His agenda is to race bait and bring us backwards. And Americans today on Martin Luther King's birthday. I'm in Washington with his son, going to Harlem. We're doing things all day. We need to say we can have a debate between conservatives and progressives over how to deal with civil rights, but neither of us should tolerate people that just race bait with no plan and just want to play us against each other, which is personified by this president.
And David Ignatius, let me bring you in here because Reverend Sharpton brought up a very interesting and possibly disturbing point. You know, I talked about the diplomatic impact of a statement on Friday. And yet, as Al Sharpton said just a minute ago, there could possibly be a national security, a military component where Donald Trump's words against everybody on an entire continent could be used by whether it's ISIS or other extremists to turn people against this country.
These are words that burn and that stay in people's memories. And young people growing up now who hear or read, see on social media that an American president speaks this way about their countries, their homes, don't forget that. Again, we're trying to build American power outwards, and it's always been an exercise based in the first instance on our values, what kind of country the United States is, then overlaid with military power, with our alliances, with our network of intelligence institutions. But the truth is, as Reverend Sharpton says, we've got thousands of people deployed in Africa trying to conduct missions. If they're not operating with a base of public support where people say, the United States is the kind of country I want to be associated with, all of that power basically begins to back up. It goes for nothing. So I think, in truth, today, Martin Luther King Day, President Trump really needs to speak to the world and the country and make clear that our country is not about this kind of racist comment. Otherwise,
John Meacham,
we all lose.
Oh, yeah. John Meacham, let's go to you for a question to Al Sharpton.
Reverend, I'm just wondering on this holiday, 50 years after the death of Dr. King, 56, 55, I guess, after the March on Washington, give us a quick portrait, if you would. Where do you think Dr. King's dream stands today?
Well, I think a lot of what he fought for and articulated in his dream is at risk. We see the moves around voting rights in North Carolina and Texas. We see the moves around civil rights, which would include criminal justice reform and other police reform and other that he wrote about in his last book, Dr. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here, being shut down by the Attorney General Sessions. But at the same time, as I join his son here with Nash Action Network's breakfast and then in Harlem later today, I have the hope, because Dr. King said we would always have steps forward and then a backlash to move us backwards. And that's really what democracy is about, moving forward and fighting those that would try to push you back. What I've never seen is such blatant words of interposition and nullification, words he described the governor of Alabama in his I Have a Dream speech, now coming out of the Oval Office. If there ever was a time that Americans need to unite on a holiday and say today that we will not tolerate going back to pre-1950 days, this is the time. Dr. King fought without any of the things we have available to us now and brought us a certain distance. We had a black president and he was reelected and he did a lot of good, even though he was criticized by blacks and whites. We cannot afford to go back. We can debate how to go forward, but we cannot go back.
And you look at those words again that you're talking about, making it worse, all the matters worse. The president on Thursday night, according to news reports, calling around friends and allies and trying those racist words out on them and asking whether he should say it the next day. And then afterwards bragging about the fact that he did use racially insensitive, or I would say racist language in a meeting with senators, which he is now denying. It makes it all the more worse because it was calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. And in so doing, he's hurt America, not only at home, but our national interests abroad. Reverend Al Sharpton, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Coming up.
Happy King Day, Joe.
Happy King Day, Reverend. Coming up, President Trump has a lot to say about North Korea, but he was radio silent as Hawaii came under a false alarm missile threat. We're going to be talking about the mood of the country amid a nuclear standoff and a scary moment this weekend. Morning Joe coming right back.